Welcome to episode 45 of Let's Talk Bitcoin for September 27th, 2013. Visit us at letstalkbitcoin.com for our daily guest blog, all our past episodes, and of course, tipping addresses. We'll be in Atlanta for the cryptocurrency conference in early October for several days. If you're going to be there, be sure to check out letstalkbitcoin.com/meetup and say hi. For those of you unable to attend, video conference passes are available now. Early bird prices end the 1st of October, and of course, both streaming passes and DVD sets are cheaper for Bitcoin. My name is Adam B. Levine, and today's show is about perspective. The recent show about entrepreneurs and idealists really seemed to strike a nerve, so I wanted to offer some of the interviews that helped me to form my thoughts on the matter. Kicking things off, Jörg Platzer is a crypto economics expert, one of the earliest brick-and-mortar Bitcoin businesses, and one of the top contenders for the Bitcoin Foundation's individual board seat. Later, I catch up with Jaron, founder and CEO of the recently out-of-beta CoinSetter platform and also a candidate for the Bitcoin Foundation's industry seat. We dig into his background and what he thinks the future of cryptocurrencies might hold. And finally, we wind things up with Sam Cole from KNC Miner in the last of our on-the-floor conference interviews from the Inside Bitcoins conference. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. This evening, we're joined by Jörg Platzer. He's the founder of Room 77, one of the first Bitcoin accepting establishments in the world, and a founding member of the Crypto Economics Consulting Group. Jörg, thank you very much for joining us today.
Hello, good evening, Adam. Thanks for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got involved in the cryptocurrency space?
I have a 20-year background, 25-year background in the IT business, but not working as a technician, rather as a conceptioner for interactive branding, strategic corporate communication. I've been working as an information architect for a long time. Out of this also came 20-year background in the hacking and phreaking scene in Germany, which of course led me to crypto technology altogether. So I would call myself a cypherpunk fan and a crypto nerd. Cryptocurrency is a concept that I was aware of since the 90s as something that the future will hopefully bring. When Bitcoin turned up, of course, it was a big moment for me, having realized there it is. So yeah, I jumped right on it.
You've started a couple of different businesses and groups, not necessarily that began focused on cryptocurrency, like Room 77, for example. That didn't start off as a Bitcoin-focused establishment, but it has sort of morphed into something that is tied to Bitcoin because of your affiliation. When you're looking at businesses and opportunities, what is it about Bitcoin that is an opportunity?
Bitcoin, in the first place, is an opportunity for the whole of society to make things easier. Bitcoin, on the other hand, for specific businesses, for existing businesses, it is, of course, an advantage when it comes to accepting digital currencies or digital payments, fast payments, no MasterCard fees, no chargebacks, and so on. But it also, of course, brings a lot of opportunities for young entrepreneurs who, with Bitcoin, can turn their business ideas into reality much easier than going through the legacy system and so on. And it will also, of course, bring up a lot of totally new business opportunities that we are not even aware of yet. Maybe in regards to what is expected as the micro payment revolution and things like that.
Specifically, we're talking about Bitcoin here, but really the question is broadly about cryptocurrencies that are like Bitcoin. Are there any things about it in its current iteration that make it unattractive, or that you think actually detract from the other things that it offers that do make it attractive?
Yeah. First of all, I would like to bring the whole discussion to cryptocurrency altogether, not only Bitcoin. Right now, the biggest obstacle for businesses to accept Bitcoin is indeed the high volatility, which of course can be taken out by services like BitPay or something like that. The overall acceptance in society, the unfolding of the network effect is, of course, still an obstacle. There's too many people waiting that everybody else accept it, and so it is not so easy to spread it over the world right now. We need to give people examples of how easy it is to use cryptocurrency and what advantages it brings. Examples not in theoretical ways, but in practical ways. Applied cryptocurrency, I would say.
I don't think that I explained that question clearly enough. Is there anything built into the Bitcoin protocol itself? Not talking about adoption, not talking about legal or regulatory hurdles, but is there anything core about Bitcoin itself that you feel like the currency would be better off, or the, Bitcoin or cryptocurrency would be in general better off if it wasn't there? Is there anything that makes the package worse?
No. Not that I could think of, no.
I'd like to get your responses to some of these statements. These are not really yes or no if you have more that you want to go into, but they're basically, do you agree with this generally or do you not agree with this? Statement A, person-to-person transactions are desirable.
Absolutely, yes.
Global markets require borderless money in order to be efficient.
Of course they do.
Sensitive financial information is vulnerable in conventional internet payment schemes. For example, when you pay for something with a credit card and your credit card information is transmitted plain text and then stored on someone else's server for however long, that's not an inherently safe relationship.
Of course it is not.
These are the core things about Bitcoin that I think that just about everybody agrees with. But then we get into these other things and it gets to be a little bit more complicated. So on the importance of compliance, I'm going to give you two different potential answers, and I'd like you to tell me which one you align with, what you think about them broadly. So on the importance of compliance, statement A, Bitcoin will succeed regardless of governmental action. Or statement B, Bitcoin must be fully integrated and compliant with the existing financial networks to be viable in anything other than the short term.
I would not go for any of these two answers, because if Bitcoin does not succeed, we will see another cryptocurrency succeed. So I cannot say Bitcoin must succeed. If we find a fatal flaw in Bitcoin, or if Bitcoin will be co-opted on a political level and the beautiful things you described before would be taken out of Bitcoin, then Bitcoin would be gone. Or it would be a PayPal 2.0, and then the next cryptocurrency still carrying those beautiful characteristics that you just mentioned would turn up, and it would be much more resilient against co-option, or it would not have that flaw that Bitcoin might have that we don't know of yet.
So on cryptocurrency broadly, here are another two statements. Bitcoin's success or failure will determine the fate of other cryptocurrencies. If Bitcoin succeeds, some altcoins will succeed. If Bitcoin fails, altcoins necessarily will fail. Or Bitcoin's experience, whether successful or not, will catalyze new altcoins that adapt and learn from Bitcoin's experience.
Statement B.
So thinking about this from a regulatory standpoint, going back to that for a second, I suspect that you're also going to tell me that you don't think that it really matters what the United States does, and that the United States has the ability to influence itself and what people are able to do in the United States. But broadly speaking, cryptocurrency is not going to be mostly affected by that. Is that about right?
Of course, it does matter what the United States say and do, because they are the leading nation of this planet, especially in political and economical regards, or in political regards in the Western Hemisphere, and in economical regards all over the planet. So whatever happens in the United States does influence what happens in the rest of the world. Of course, if the United States would completely go against Bitcoin, crack down on it, illegalize it, or demand the code to be changed so it can be fully compliant to the legacy financial system, that would not mean that the rest of the world would not adopt Bitcoin the way it exists.
Do you think that cryptocurrency, as we know it now, is compatible, can live alongside the existing system of financial, instruments that we have now?
No, not on a large scale. I've been thinking about this a lot. That is that question, can fiat and cryptocurrency coexist, or are they born enemies and one has to kill the other? The only way I can imagine they could coexist would be if some certain societies, be they geographically defined or demographically defined, for some reason decide that they want to live together using a fiat currency and want to live together in a society where everybody is being surveyed and every transaction is recorded. It's hard for me to imagine that people would want to do that, but we don't know what the future brings. And maybe there's societies that want to have this kind of structure because they feel safer or because they want to work closely together. That is really the only scenario I can imagine in a very far future, that fiat and cryptocurrency can coexist. But then also these societies would probably economically not be as successful as the societies around them. For me, it is really hard to imagine that the fiat money we have today and the kind of financial institutions and regulations do have a chance to survive in the long run.
And do you base any of your business decisions or decisions about which sides of Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies you're going to get involved in based on what you think the regulatory structure will be moving forward? Or is that largely something that you don't concern yourself with?
I don't concern myself with that yet, because in our normal businesses, the government and the financial regulators and the tax office are perfectly fine with the way we use Bitcoin. But of course, I'm concerned about how this will go on, which is something that we really don't know. It is going to be very, very interesting how governments react in the next 1 or 2 years.
Yeah, it definitely seems like something has to change. I mean, so put yourself in the shoes of someone whose job it is to regulate Bitcoin or to try and make it compliant with existing systems. You can pick Germany, you can pick the US, wherever you'd like. Do you think that there actually is an actionable way forward to do this? Or do you think, it's much ado about nothing and it doesn't really matter what's attempted because it doesn't work? There's no way to make it work.
As I mentioned, I don't think there is a way that makes it work, that makes control of cryptocurrency possible. Of course, this is a huge problem for everybody who's into regulation. And also you mentioned people whose job it is to regulate. Yeah, they will have to come to a point where they realize we cannot regulate this.
To kind of summarize what we've been talking about here, if I very much simplify this down, it's more important to use the system as it is, to work with the system as it is, and to make the best use of it possible, given the tools we have at our disposal, than it is to conform to standards that already exist in the legacy currency world, be it governmental or whatever you wanted to apply it to.
Well, it's just not possible to make Bitcoin compliant to the existing system. It's just not possible. That is what we are trying to do over here in Germany when it comes to governmental interactions. And that is why you read all these news in the media about Bitcoin now legal in Germany and Bitcoin now legal tender in Germany, which is all complete misinterpretations of what is going on here. But we are asking the government questions that make them, by answering, understand how impossible it is to put the regulatory corsets or cages that we have around this technology, that make them aware of the fact that even their legal definitions don't make sense anymore in a cryptocurrency world. Look at definitions of money laundering, for example. The law about money laundering in Germany or in Europe basically says whoever hides the source of money is a money launderer. But when I pay somebody, one of my employees in Bitcoin, what we do, of course, they're going to mix their coins because they know that their employer otherwise can see maybe where they spent their money. Only because they don't want me, only because my employees don't want me to see where they spent their wages does not mean that they're money launderers. So all these definitions have to be thought over and defined in a new way. And as I said, that is what we are trying to do over here, ask questions to the government. And we have a very good chance for that here because one of the members of the German parliament, the Bundestag, himself also is somebody who would like to see the central bank system abolished. So he can ask all these questions and the government has to answer him because he is a member of the Bundestag, so they have to answer him. And this is a very interesting process now, asking these questions and seeing how the government struggles in answering them, brings out totally contradictory, mutually contradictory answers. And we hope that this way, understanding can be established with the government that it isn't just not going to be so easy to put this thing into the regulatory cages and make it compliant.
From a privacy perspective, you brought up a really interesting point there. Do you encourage your employees to mix their coins after you pay them, or is that just something that they do because they have this privacy concern?
I inform them and educate them in how to use Bitcoins securely, how to store them securely, and how to use them. And part of that is, of course, to let them have knowledge about the basic functions of the blockchain and the total transparency that the blockchain offers, which is not a disadvantage of the blockchain and of cryptocurrency, by the way. I see transparency as a big advantage as well. But I don't tell them to mix their coins, but I tell them that this is a possibility, and I tell them what the possibilities are if they don't mix the coins.
Is there any issue right now that you think that the cryptocurrency community really should be focusing on that isn't getting enough attention at this point?
The elections.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. With regards to the Bitcoin Foundation, I think they're up to about 700 members right now, but that's in a community that supposedly has a couple of million people, or at least a couple 100,000. What do you think about the role that the Bitcoin Foundation has played to this point, and where do you see its value or not?
Well, when the Bitcoin Foundation started out, it was perceived as an organization sort of speaking on behalf of the whole global Bitcoin economy and movement. This, of course, is a very, very difficult task. I hardly have ever seen a community with such a diversity of people, characters, and motivations as the Bitcoin community. But that's what it was perceived as when it started out. It did come to a moment that changed a bit, so that many people rather saw it as a San Francisco or Silicon Valley or Washington, D.C. business club, more or less catering for itself. I think these elections now are actually the point where the Bitcoin Foundation and the Bitcoin Foundation community is going to decide in which direction to go. I don't think this question is yet answered and decided. I would hope that the Bitcoin Foundation, because it has a very solid basis and there is a few very, very capable people working there and putting their energy and resources in, I would hope that the Bitcoin Foundation turns into something that tries to unify the whole Bitcoin community and that caters globally for the whole Bitcoin economy. That would be my wish.
Jörg Plotzer, thank you very much for your time.
Adam, thank you.
Hello, I'm Jeffrey Tucker, Bitcoin enthusiast and host of the upcoming Cryptocurrency Conference in Atlanta, Georgia, October 5th. We've got a marvelously libertarian-infused day of discussion about what is indisputably the future of money, and you are invited. For those of you who can't attend, we've partnered with Let's Talk Bitcoin to offer video conference passes available for government currency and, of course, Bitcoin. For more information, bitcoinvideopass.com.
More than 300,000 users and counting trust blockchain.info. It's a Bitcoin wallet service and a wealth of Bitcoin information, and is completely free to use. With a blockchain.info wallet, you'll get the convenience of a web wallet and the security of a desktop client. Blockchain.info is also a block explorer. You can use it to see Bitcoin transactions in real time, check the balance of any Bitcoin address, and view many handy Bitcoin charts, all for free. See what they have to offer today at blockchain.info.
So today we're joined by Jaron Lukasavich. He's the founder and CEO of CoinSetter, a new exchange that's coming into the Bitcoin space. We've been going through kind of an interesting time from a regulatory standpoint, and there are a lot of different views on how best to approach this and really how important even the question is. So, Jaron, you're kind of the prototypical entrepreneur in the Bitcoin space, and I appreciate you sitting down to have this conversation with us. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got interested and then involved in the cryptocurrency space?
I worked in investment banking and private equity out of college. I think towards the end of that, I got very interested in the startup space in general. I had already started another company with my brother and a friend of mine. This friend ended up later helping me co-found CoinSetter. Really, for a long time, had been talking about Bitcoin, really got me interested in it to begin with. We ended this other company that we had started late in 2012. I was in the online ticketing industry. And, I think it was pretty obvious at that time that I wanted to do something in the Bitcoin space. So, I worked really hard on putting together this company. It was a lot of late nights. First, figuring out specifically what I wanted to do in the space. And, once I kind of figured that out, of course, the space was much different back then. I think it was obviously much smaller. I was pretty much at that time creating a leveraged trading platform for play money. At least that's what my friends thought. The space has changed a lot since then. So, we raised this capital earlier this year from a group of highly regarded investors. And that really enabled us to go out and create a really quality product, which is what we've done. And we're in the final stages of putting that together and releasing it to the public. So, I think a big difference between what we were initially creating and what we have now is, whereas before it really was a leverage platform for play money, and, Mt. Gox was doing $10 million of monthly volume at the time. Now, I think people's vision of Bitcoin has become much bigger. So now we're building really a Wall Street style ECN trading platform for Bitcoin, which, aggregates the feeds of multiple exchanges. We have our own internal high performance exchange, which operates on a millisecond level. And, it's really about being a reliable place to trade within the US. And on the other side of that is regulatory issues that we're confronting right now. And that's something we're taking very seriously. I can't say too many specifics on certain parts of it, but there is light at the end of the tunnel as far as, us being able to legally operate in the US in the next few months.
You came to startups, it sounds like, before you necessarily came to Bitcoin. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so why do you view Bitcoin as an entrepreneurial opportunity? What problems does it solve? What opportunities does it present that make it attractive as someone who came at this from the startup space first?
Well, Bitcoin's a funny thing when you really look at trying to start a business around it, because the problem about Bitcoin from an entrepreneurial perspective is that the greatest innovation in Bitcoin is Bitcoin. And so, you have this very interesting, secure virtual currency. You start to think, okay, well, how can I make money off of this? Because I want to go start a company and I like doing that. I think that can be a hard thing because, the exchange concept is pretty obvious. Becoming a payment processor is pretty obvious. And I think people try to get more creative outside of that. Really, it is that payment network that is the true innovation. So, I think for me, I first got interested in Bitcoin for Bitcoin. I looked at it and I think it meshes with a lot of my political views. I'm interested in finance in general. And so it had a lot of appeal to me personally. I knew I wanted to start an industry in it. And I really just worked hard to say, okay, well, what do I think is missing? And at that time, it was basically a great Forex platform for Bitcoin. Having to wire money to a foreign country just with a bad looking front end, it was just kind of not a great process at the time. And so I thought I could do it better. And we've even outdone my own expectations at this point.
So are there any aspects to it that make it unattractive or make it difficult to deal with from an entrepreneurial standpoint?
Well, the regulation's a big one because it changes so quickly. You really have to stay on top of it. And I see a lot of other exchanges come out and, we've all seen a lot of Bitcoin companies not take the regulation thing seriously or early enough. They've been truly harmed by it. It almost amazes me how early companies in the space they didn't even think they would have to do AML procedures. I think that's pretty crazy, but the space is changing a lot. You have a lot of people who are saying, hey, Bitcoin is a way to quickly send money to your friends. It has all these great benefits. How can I make it more easily usable by the common person? And we and other companies have kind of popped up trying to solve that specific problem. And Bitcoin does provide great infrastructure to build companies off of. I think there's room in the space for a lot of exchanges, for instance. I think what most people think in exchanges, most people think an exchange is a trading platform. And in 5 years, that won't be the case. Most exchanges will be working closely with app developers, banks, financial institutions, other companies like that. And they'll be in the business of converting fiat to Bitcoins, which are then quickly sent somewhere else so that you can pay your friends quickly. It's really exciting. And there's definitely a lot of interest, and the infrastructure isn't quite there yet, in order to facilitate that system. But over the next 5 years, I think this should become a very exciting thing, and it'll change the financial landscape quite a bit.
So I have a couple of statements here that are either true or false, basically, or you basically just agree or disagree. If you want to expand on any of them, then we can do that. Point one, person-to-person transactions are desirable in a financial system.
True.
Okay. Global markets need borderless money, or at least benefit from borderless money.
True.
Sensitive financial information is vulnerable in conventional internet payment paradigms.
True.
Okay, so these are things that, broadly speaking, most people within the Bitcoin network think are good things about Bitcoin. But there are other things about Bitcoin, like the anonymous nature of it or pseudonymous nature of it. It comes up every once in a while. Are there any parts of Bitcoin that you deal with as an entrepreneur working in the space despite, you deal with Bitcoin despite this part, not, because it has these other advantages?
Yeah. I think people in the space struggle a lot with the anonymous, pseudonymous nature of Bitcoin. And I think it doesn't sound great to say this, but a lot of people want to have their cake and eat it too. So, you have people who say, okay, Bitcoin isn't an anonymous cash system and people will be able to figure out over the long run where payments are going. But then, anytime people talk about that existing, they say, no, we can't have that. So for me, one of the great parts about Bitcoin is the fact that it toes that line. You can talk all day about, Bitcoin will survive no matter what. And that's true to an extent. But if Bitcoin's viewed by banks and regulators as an anonymous cash system, it will essentially be closed off from society. It can never become a really powerful force. I'm more focused on how can I pay my friends in 10 minutes. There are other, I think, benefits of Bitcoin that kind of have to separate Bitcoin companies from Bitcoin itself. So people who hold Bitcoin themselves will be privy to much more privacy than people who hold money with Bitcoin companies. So, I think that kind of fits into, one of the parts that got a lot of us excited about Bitcoin. It's almost a system you vote into. You make the decision to join it. If you don't like it, maybe you switch to another altcoin. It's all at your own elective. And I think that the fact that Bitcoin isn't strictly anonymous is a huge plus because, we've seen over and over again for the past 25 years that companies that are looked upon as anonymous cash systems get shut down. It's certainly, even though I am an entrepreneur in the space, I'm also very passionate about Bitcoin. I want to see it not just survive, but I want to see it thrive. That's what really drives me every day.
So I have a couple of sort of opposing statements here that I'm curious for which one you find yourself with more. On the importance of compliance, statement A, Bitcoin will succeed regardless of governmental action, versus point B, Bitcoin must be fully integrated and compliant with existing financial networks to be viable in anything but the short term.
Obviously, I side toward B. I mean, the cool thing about Bitcoin is it is kind of powerful force because of the distributed network. It is here to stay. But the question is how big and impactful can it actually become? Do we want it off in the corners, looked upon as just a sketchy type of currency, or do we want real people being able to use Bitcoin and receiving a lot of the benefits it offers? And so in order for that to happen, you have to have, at least Bitcoin companies have to comply with regulation. They have to get bank accounts. You can't have any sort of large sums of money flow into Bitcoin if it's not through the banking system. It'll never happen peer-to-peer, like an in-person meeting. So that's really what we're trying to do.
You're to be forgiven for focusing very much so on the U.S. regulatory side, as you have a company doing business within that exact sphere of regulatory influence. But this is another question within the community, is how important is the U.S. relative to the rest of the world? And so this brings us to the next grouping. Proposition A, acceptance or lack thereof in the U.S. will be a deciding factor in the future success of Bitcoin, versus Proposition B, acceptance or lack thereof in the U.S. will be a deciding factor in the future development of Bitcoin in the U.S. So the differentiation there is that one implies that the U.S. dictates and the other implies that the U.S. is just deciding its own fate.
There's some validity, in my view, to U.S. acceptance having a strong impact, but in the end, I think we have it. There are very positive indicators that Bitcoin is being accepted by the government. I think even more so than the regulation, it comes down to people. So what kind of people enter the space and start companies and talk to regulators? I think a lot of what's happened in the past in this space is a lot of people like to say that they're in active conversations with regulators and law enforcement officials and so forth, but maybe they've talked to them once. It's like a great talking point. We can be doing a lot more. And also it's what products do you create around Bitcoin? We are super focused about not launching before we're ready. I see other exchanges popping up that are, launching, kind of towing the line of legality and launching in jurisdictions with which they don't really have licensing in. And that's their decision to make. But in the end, by waiting the extra month, we're looking at this as a marathon. marathon. And, by doing things the right way, talking to bankers, talking to regulators, explaining to them why they don't need to be scared of Bitcoin. And it's a combination of those things that help move it forward. But in the end, it comes more down to people than it does like even the Bitcoin protocol, who is talking to regulators, who is starting a business, and so forth.
So now we've been talking about Bitcoin, but there's a broader question here of the future, not just of Bitcoin, but of the cryptocurrencies, which Bitcoin is the most popular of, but is kind of getting to be a large category. Of these two statements, which do you think is more true? A, Bitcoin's success or failure will depend on the fate of other cryptocurrencies. If Bitcoin succeeds, some altcoins will also succeed. If Bitcoin fails, then altcoins, broadly speaking, will probably fail. Or Bitcoin's experience, whether successful or not, will catalyze and inform the next generation of altcoins. Their success or failure isn't really tied at all to Bitcoin.
It's a good question. Call me biased, but I don't even question Bitcoin's existence. I think it's here to stay and it's super useful. There are obviously people who want it. So Bitcoin, or maybe it's just virtual currencies in general, like that's something that's here to stay. People often ask themselves, is Bitcoin it? I think so, but I could be proven wrong. But, when you look at the VC money that's being poured into Bitcoin specifically, the infrastructure that's being built around Bitcoin specifically, Bitcoin is an IP address for money. And when you go back into the early days of the internet and you look at TCP/IP, there were 20 other competing, technologies that basically did the same thing, but TCP/IP was the option that caught on most broadly, and that's what you're seeing happen with Bitcoin right now. People are very focused on the currency aspect, which is an important aspect of it, but I'm really focused on the network aspect and how can a Bitcoin address facilitate dollar payments, and that's what we are doing as an exchange over the long run, and other exchanges are doing that. So the infrastructure definitely, really the money flowing it, the entrepreneurial efforts that are happening really lead me to believe that Bitcoin is it. And can Bitcoin change? Possibly. Will other currencies potentially come up? I think Ripple's already shown that there are other options out there that may be good for certain scenarios. So, it's hard to say, but I'm putting my money on Bitcoin.
And then last question, and this one is always controversial. So if you don't want to answer it, you don't have to, but I'm very curious to know what you think. You've worked in the financial industry. You worked for a time as a trader at JP Morgan. People question whether or not the existing financial system as it currently is very compatible with Bitcoin. And compliance aside, the larger question is Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies represent, especially if they pick up adoption, competition to legacy or government currencies in a way that we've never really seen in our lifetime. And I can't really think of any generation that has. Do you think that there's a fundamental disconnect here, or that there's a conflict here, or do you think that they can integrate and it'll be clean?
I think that's how the way you ask that question is how most people look at it currently, but I think it's the complete opposite of how we should be looking at the situation. So it's not, will the banking sector adapt to Bitcoin? The banking sector is what it is, and it has a system that at least works. It works terribly, but it works for them, and they make money off of it. And so in order for the banking system to accept a new technology that may be better, there has to be something in it for them. Bitcoin certainly offers that, part because of the Bitcoin address and the fact that it is really a public system that does have value to banks that pretty much no one is talking right now. I actually just wrote an article in Bitcoin Magazine that kind of touches upon it. I think, Bitcoin, it can be its own thing. You're holding Bitcoins, it really is like your own private Swiss bank account. And you have this great currency that is yours, but that's not all that Bitcoin has to be. So when I look at Bitcoins, how will they impact the banking system? I take more of a look at how does the wire system work? How does the ACH system work? What's correspondent banks' place in that system, and why is it so expensive to send these transfers? And why does it take so long? Those are issues that I think are important to confronting. And I think Bitcoin, I already see solutions that Bitcoin offers to fix a lot of those problems, so that my real goal in what I'm doing is you should be able to send $1 million to a sketchy place in Romania and have it arrive there in an hour fully BSA compliant. So it really is about, free flow of money across borders at an affordable price.
You mentioned a $1 million amount with full compliance, and I think that makes sense. But I wonder if it makes sense about $10 transactions or $50 transactions. Do you think that we'll wind up with a two-tiered system where there's like a threshold above which there are these compliance requirements because they make sense and they're effective at that level, but that doesn't tie up all of the lower end with this stuff that doesn't necessarily make as much sense?
I think what you're going to see happen is that it's not really going to matter how big or small a transaction was. The compliance cost for Bitcoin is just low. A lot of that stuff hasn't been built yet, but over the next 5 to 10 years, it will be built. If you can kind of have certainty that you're sending money to a safe Bitcoin address in a foreign country, no matter where it was, there's no reason why you couldn't send money over the Bitcoin protocol from your bank account to that bank account. So those are things that are definitely further out, but they're possible and they're really exciting because I think enough of us have seen how difficult it is just to send money to your friends, or if you own a business, if you send money across borders, it can cost $75 just for the transaction. And you think about the AML compliance that needs to go on behind that. A lot of this is just manual labor that banks are doing, and it's very prone to human error too. I'm focused when I kind of think about the direction that we want to take CoinSetter. It's very much on that note.
It sounds to me like what you're saying is that from this perspective, Bitcoin is actually improving the efficiency and reducing costs and, mistakes at the banks, but you're still using those banks in order to make the transactions, just that the bank is then using this as the underlying means as opposed to like a SWIFT or a wire transfer, something like that. Is that right?
Exactly. And who knows what, it's not to say that those other options won't even exist. Like Bitcoin might be a different transaction option. Maybe, I think one question that happens in the Bitcoin space is, will Bitcoin companies be forced to create reversibility in transactions? So irreversibility remains in the protocol, but are Bitcoin companies subject to reversing it? And it's really hard to say at this point how this would play out in the banking system. But just think about a world where you could send money to your friend and you could have the option between a wire transfer, which costs $35, an ACH transfer, which costs $3, and your friend needs to set up an account on your bank's website, and then it'll arrive to them in 3 days, or a Bitcoin transfer, which will arrive almost immediately and is irreversible but cheap. Maybe you limit that to $100 or $500 or something. There's so much creativity that can happen here. That's why it's really exciting. And it's not to say that there aren't reasons why you wouldn't want to send a reversible transaction even over the Bitcoin protocol if it's of a large sum. There are a lot of arguments that we'll be able to make to banks that will show huge value proposition to them. So when I kind of talk about these things, people are always trying to think about when they're, looking to start their Bitcoin business, people are trying to think of these gimmicky ideas that, what can people buy Bitcoins with? Or how can I use Bitcoin in this creative payments way? But there are some really glaringly large opportunities here, such as, could I create an escrow service that you can transfer Bitcoins from and to, but denominated in dollars? In fact, I think I saw someone created an Android app like this. I mean, that's just a very awesome example of where all this is heading. That you can carry balances in dollars, but then send money to your friends in Bitcoin. And you think about, as more people use a system like that, you'll have logistics companies that are similar to correspondent banks pop up that, make this system even smoother. It's just really exciting to me where all this is heading.
In a compliant future, do people still make transactions from person to person? Or do you think that compliant Bitcoin transactions, in order to meet that burden of compliance, can only really go through banks, and that banks can use Bitcoin, you can have the efficiencies of it there, but that we won't see it used for legitimate purposes person to person?
My initial response is that there's no reason to limit ourselves to a better option. So I think, PP payments are going to be huge in the Bitcoin space. I think that, sending money from your bank account via Bitcoin is another great option, and they'll kind of fit with each other.
Does the one preclude the other?
No, I don't think it does. And that's why it's so exciting. One unfortunate thing about the banking industry is that banks used to be, their primary business function was to protect money, protect deposits. And now their primary business function is to figure out where money is going and keep track of it. I leave that to everyone to figure out if you agree that it's necessary or not. But that's the main reason why banking is so costly these days. A lot of it's in AML compliance. I think Bitcoin has some options in there that will really help smooth the system over. And again, I'm looking at things very much from a kind of like banking perspective and services we can offer to banks to make it easier for people to send money to their friends from their bank account. But the P2P side, I mean, I send money to friends in Bitcoins all the time. And I prefer when they send it to me because we all know that the Bitcoins are gold and much rather have them than dollars. So a lot of people are doing a lot of different things. They all look at Bitcoin in a different way. I think that it's almost hard to predict everywhere where this will go.
Jaron, CEO of CoinSetter, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks a lot.
Hi, Stephanie here. Would you like to turn your book into an enthralling audiobook? Need a persuasive commercial to promote your company? How about a narrator for your explainer video? Here's where I can help. I'm a freelance voiceover artist, and since 2009, I've lent my voice to dozens of audio projects. To hear some examples of my work, check out my website, smvoice.info. If you like what you hear, I'd love to be the voice of your next project. Get in touch at smvoice.info.
Hi, this is Jason King, founder at Sean's Outpost, and you are listening to Let's Talk Bitcoin. Sean's Outpost is a homeless outreach in Pensacola, Florida, and we are proudly powered by Bitcoin. To date, over 13,000 meals have been fed to the homeless in our area, all purchased with Bitcoin and through the generosity of the cryptocurrency community. Read more about us at seansoutpost.com. Food, shelter, Bitcoin, everybody. Sean'sOutpost.com.
I'm here talking with Sam Cole. He's one of the directors of KNC Miner, which you've probably heard about on the show if you've listened to it before. Hi, Sam.
Hi, everyone. So I'm one of the directors of KNC Miner. There are 5 of us in the team. There's me and my colleague Andreas Kennemar from KNC, Kennemar and Cole. And there's another company called Orsoc, which have joined forces to become KNC Miner.
Okay, so that's where the name comes from, I assume.
It is indeed, yes. Kennemar and Cole. I'm the C in the KNC Miner.
I see, cool. So, okay, KNC Miner, as the name implies, is making mining equipment, is that right?
Yeah, sure. We're making ASIC mining equipment and we're selling to the general public. We're selling fully functional devices that anyone can come and buy. We're doing quite well. We're at 28 nanometer technology. If you look on the league tables, we're currently near the top and we expect to be there for a while, but hey, we're open for competition. Someone else might come at us. But we've got a few things we can do to stop it. And we begin shipping our devices in September. You
have some videos that I've seen online. You have a video of the Mars unit, which is an FPGA kind of miner. Do you have video of the ASIC units yet or not yet?
No, there's no videos of the ASIC unit yet. Our chips are currently in production. They will arrive in time. There will be another video of Jupiter online where we really do announce its final speed and final performance figures, because the ones on the website now, there's the minimum guarantees. The Mars was an FPGA to prove that we could actually engineer a device in this time frame, on this scale, and get it assembled, produced, get it coded, get it running on mining equipment. So we did that very quickly. The power of the device, as it's an FPGA, is not quite as good as an ASIC. So we took the time now to really, really get the ASIC absolutely top-notch, and everything's on track, and hopefully everyone will be happy.
Yeah, so you have sort of a track record to show, look, we can actually ship, the saying of real artists ship, right? Yeah. You can actually do this and do it on a time frame before we take your pre-order, right?
Exactly. So the company Orsoc have sold devices before. They've sold things to the public, they've shipped, they've got a history of doing it for the last sort of 10 years of engineering products. This is their first Bitcoin-related product, but everything is on track. The Mars FPGA, the prototype, was never shipped, because if we shipped it to our customers in that time, it probably wouldn't have given a decent return. And we need to make sure our customers get as much a return as possible, because we want them to buy again.
Your devices are named after planets. There's the Mars, which is this FPGA rig. Then there's Jupiter and Saturn, right?
And Mercury.
And Mercury. Okay, Mercury is the upgrade, right, to put on.
So our smallest device is called Mercury. It has 1 chip inside. Then we have Saturn with 2 chips, and we have Jupiter with 4 chips. The reason we chose planets is we need it to be easily understandable in multi-languages. Most of our customers are not English-speaking, but they all do understand this. They all can understand a Mars, a Saturn, a Mercury. They can all talk about it. It translates really easily into their languages, and it's something everyone can understand, rather than X5000 or X2000. It wouldn't work very well.
Okay, that makes sense. I can dig it. Okay. I was kind of wondering why they were named after planets, but that makes makes a lot of sense.
Sure.
So you have these units coming out, and so you're going to start shipping in September. Which ones are shipping in September?
So the good thing about our product is they all ship at the same time. They are actually, a Mercury is in the same size box as a Jupiter. So we make a box, and based on what you paid for is how many chips go inside.
Okay.
So exactly. So everyone is in the same shipping queue. The factory will make this many Mercuries a day, this many Saturns a day, this many Jupiters a day, based on what was ordered that day, and then we ship them all in at the same time.
So you literally take all the orders, and then at the end of the month or the beginning of the month or whatever, you ship them all on the same day, so people receive them at the same time?
No. So if you ordered a Jupiter today, a Saturday, a Mercury today, that would put you in the queue position of whatever today gave you. After that, in October, because you buy today, you get in October the 2nd, for example, we would ship as many Mercuries or Saturns or Jupiters as we can based on what you purchased today.
Oh, I see. Okay, that makes more sense. So after you finish, you're going to ship in September and October?
Currently, our shipping queue is full for September.
Okay.
And that basically puts us in like the 1st, 2nd, 3rd week of October, which is about where we are today.
Okay. So, and I saw an announcement on your mailing list about having like a moratorium on shipping for November, December, January. Is that right? Or
December, January, February.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So we will obviously allow people, when we start shipping, to still buy a box and ship that before we stop shipping.
Okay.
And then what we want is we kind of need to approach all the other manufacturers, everyone else, to not put too much hashing power on the network, because if no customer gets a return on investment, no customers buy again, and we don't really want that. We need each customer to have a decent return so they buy back.
Do you think that's going to be effective, like to try to convince other manufacturers not to put out hashing power? It seems like they have a big incentive to sell their products if they have them.
Sure, but what we're saying is that if they want to play, we'll play. If they don't, we'll happily continue shipping, we'll happily fight. We need to give our customers a decent return, and we'll do whatever we can to give them a reasonable expectation of a return. But it is actually good for everyone if all the manufacturers play kind of nice. And what we're hoping is that they do. And they've approached us, and some of them agreed today that we can talk about those sorts of things, because it is good for them as well.
You're expecting a big increase in the difficulty when you start releasing these devices. Is that right? It's kind of sounded like that from the website.
Yes, it is a big increase of difficulty. There's no question about it. I think nobody's under the impression it's not going to grow up. It is going to get higher. We ourselves are shipping enough to make it move, of course, and there are other players also shipping enough to make it move, and all of us together, we're all fighting over the same pie. Difficulty will grow by whatever is on the network, and sure, it's going to get difficult.
So who would you say is your biggest competition?
Well, we have competition from everyone, from Butterfly Labs, from the Avalon chip sales, from the DIYers. There's a new company called HashFast that we're on the network. If they ship in October, if they're going to release a 20 nanometer chip competitive with ours, they need to release quite a few gigahashes or petahashes even to make it work. So there's competition coming from everywhere, and I don't think we've seen them all yet.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm wondering if that's going to work, right? Like, is there going to be just a flood of ASICs on the market and nobody's really going to get a return like you were talking about? I mean, I'm just curious to see how the scenario plays out.
And we're curious too. We cannot guarantee a return. We can do whatever we can do to try to make it happen, because we need people to get a return. All the manufacturers, regardless of what they say, need people to make a return, so you buy twice. We can't constantly compete for new customers that haven't got equipment yet. That's self-defeating.
I guess if you were just an average person out there and you were thinking about, should I buy an ASIC miner? Like, should I go and buy one of these big heavy-duty mining rigs? I'm thinking about the cost and how many Bitcoins am I going to get? Is it going to be worth it? Do you think that they're going to be able to make a return in 3 months? Like, if they got their device in September, let's say, do you think in 3 months they're going to get a return on?
We wouldn't ship a box if we didn't think they could get a return. It would be unfair. We're not in the market for taking as much money as possible in as short a time frame as possible. We're here for the long run. We're going to try to give everyone as much a return as possible. We need our customers to make more from the Jupiters, Saturns, and Mercuries than we do. Then you buy again. And so when we start shipping other products next year, we need you to make a return on them. So you buy again. And it's good for the customers and it's good for us.
And you're also doing a thing where you rent out like shares of a miner, is that right?
No, we're not currently doing that. The smallest purchase from us is a Mercury device.
Gotcha. Okay. So what? There's There's something on the KNC website about storage space or something like that, or what? Hosting space. Okay, so what is that?
So these miners, they require a lot of electricity to run, and people don't have that much power in their house. They don't want to host it. They just want the coin generation ability. So what we're saying is that we will put it in our own data center for you, charge you a monthly fee, and we will look after it. All of the mining power will be yours. It's not ours. We will just simply host it for you, run it against your own wallet. So it's more of a maintenance running fee, but you need to buy the device first.
Oh, but you have to buy the device first, and then you host it. Okay, that's an important detail.
Yeah, a lot of our customers think a lot of people think that they can just buy the hosting contract. Right. The hosting contract does not include a miner. They are expensive to run. It is an expensive hosting, but it's an optional extra. You don't have to take it.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So, wow, all kinds of other questions. So, I mean, these devices are for mining Bitcoins, and you said you're selling them to regular people. There have been some people who are really worried that like ASICs actually will tend to centralize the mining power, in the hands of whoever can have an ASIC, right? What do you have to say to that?
So what we've done is we've produced what we think is the best chip size and a sort of dollar per hash ratio that still makes sense for the average person to get involved with. As long as we can get these 28 nanometer chips in as many hands as possible, we actually stop centralization, because for someone to centralize it, they need to go again much bigger, stronger than our chips. So we are trying to distribute it as much as possible so that we don't get centralization of mining, because we think that's bad.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So, and these are for Bitcoin, and it is, as far as I understand, it's technically possible to mine other coins, like other cryptocurrencies, with different algorithms, like the Scrypt or the Prime Coin algorithm or whatever, on a device that's an ASIC, but it's a little different. Like there's not going to be that big gain in hashing power on the Scrypt algorithm, for instance, between like a graphics card and an FPGA, or FPGA and ASIC, right? Is KNC Miner thinking about making devices that mine on other algorithms besides the SHA-256 for Bitcoin?
Yep, I think we've previously announced it before that our next device that comes out, it's going to be made alongside Jupiter, Saturn, and Mercury, and it will be a multi-currency device. So we're going to try to target as many of the coins as possible. It will currently be a reprogrammable FPGA. They're reprogrammable, so that on any daily basis you can go to its web interface and you say, right, I want to mine this coin today, and you can mine that coin for as long as you want. Okay, let's change to mine another coin. And if a new coin comes out, you hit update and you'll download firmware from us, and you can mine that newly created coin. And it will do it for Scrypt coins and SHA-256 coins and as many coins as we can squeeze into it.
That sounds really cool. If you need a tester, I'm available.
Sure.
Cool. Okay, Sam, well, anything else you want to add?
No. I wish all of our miners good luck. It's going to be competitive, and we really do hope that everyone gets a return.
Yeah, and okay, your website one more time is kncminer.com?
kncminer.com, and I'm Sam Cole.
Okay, thank you so much, Sam. I appreciate you talking with me today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to episode 45 of Let's Talk Bitcoin. Content for today's show was provided by Stephanie Murphy, Sam Cole, Jaron from Coinsetter, and Jörg Platzer. Music was provided by Jared Rubens and Jazztown. If you can't get enough of original thought and discussion, read our daily blog at letstalkbitcoin.com. Sign up for our weekly newsletter at theweeklybitcoin.com. To get in touch, send me mail at adam@letstalkbitcoin.com or visit letstalkbitcoin.com/talk to be directed to our listener subreddit. Thanks for listening.